Um, Very warm welcome to my alumni here, and a very good morning to all my students and my colleagues. It's a privilege and honor to set the ball rolling on this one very important topic, preventing the next crisis. Of course, a finance professor would have been more a befitting person rather than an accounting professor. An accounting professor will be more interested in understanding post factum, whereas a finance professor should understand what is going to happen for the future. But it gives me immense pleasure for one of the most important reasons that three of the panelists here are from Exide. That also conveys a message to us that the finance world sooner than later will be driven by none other than XIMB. But I'm also worried that will this group of XIMBs of future will lead to some crisis. So it's all the more important for us to see that we don't have this type of crisis once again. I don't think for this gathering, for this panelist, I have to define what is crisis, but definitely I'm interested in actually throwing some light, raising some questions for the very well picked and chosen panelists for the day. Because of the sheer experience, I am sure they may answer some of the questions that I'm going to raise and some of the questions that you're going to raise. The nexus, by default, is actually relationship, a link. So by default, a link or a relationship is not bad. But unhealthy nexus is a matter of concern. Unhealthy nexus between the important players of the market leads to crisis. Not necessarily every relationship will lead to the crisis. So therefore, a question that comes to the forefront, why at all an unhealthy nexus develops? Is it because of the inefficiency of the market? Is it because of the inefficiency of the regulator? Or is it because of the very nature in which the players operate there? Or is it something more? Maybe the professors sitting here are also partly responsible for this unhealthy nexus which has evolved over a period of time. When I say professor, the academic community together, severally and individually is responsible for this type of nexus. So otherwise, if you see, the basically finance market's responsibility is to channelize the money wherever there is a productive investment. So the person who needs money and the person who has money are two different classes of people, and the market has to bring that together. If the market has to bring that together, you have to accept the fact that these two extremes will always have a problem of information asymmetry, where the regulator has to play a role. I'm extremely happy that we have somebody from SEBI to talk on that today. Because of this asymmetry of information, right from the beginning of the initiation of the project to the execution of the project, continuation of the project, there is this problem which finance professors often teach in the class, is a problem of adverse selection, and the problem of moral hazard is always there. So is the financial crisis a result of adverse selection and moral hazard? If yes, is not the last decades of experience not enabled us to address this problem of moral hazard and adverse selection. The techniques, the technology, the information has grown, but the nature, the complexity of the business is also grown. In the same way, the crisis creation has also, the ability to create crisis has also grown. They say often, I often say in my class, when a man comes out with a better mouse trap, mouse comes out with a better way to come out of it. So is it a Tom and Jerry's game happening there? Whose interests are we serving? I just want to put 3 points on that. The nexus between the shareholders and the management, which was actually one of our themes for today's presentation also, or for this conclave also. The limitation of shareholders' value is the obsession of the management, is the obsession of the finance givers, which most of them are sitting here, is the obsession of maximization of shareholders' wealth is responsible for financial crisis? If yes, is there an alternative to that? And we as a professors are also responsible for that, because we, right from our FR and FSA class, we keep on hitting on to you the concept of maximization of shareholders' wealth. So if maximization of shareholders' wealth leading to the financial crisis, which in my personal understanding to a large extent yes, but I'll be very happy to learn and listen the views of the speakers here, is the obsession with the shareholders' wealth is the reason for the financial crisis. A corollary to that, because of that obsession, you convert the manager also driven by that, which is a problem of managerial remuneration. Why is a manager behaving like that? Misreporting, circumventing the law, greasing the palms of the regulator. Why is a manager behaving like that? Maybe the wrong, not right approach of managerial remuneration, which is tilted toward the shareholders' maximization. For example, if I say that the strong balance sheet is one which has a high equity, and most of the companies with a high equity are considered to be fundamentally strong, but if I go to the banker with a bunch of my vendors where it is also equity financed organization, a banker is not willing to finance because of the nexus between the large industry and the banker. Is a banker playing safe? Or is a banker driven by the maximization of shareholders' wealth of the bank itself? Because in both the cases, you know, there is a risk involved. But on one hand, he is ready to take the risk. Fundamental point which our finance professors teach you, that high gain is a high risk. So high interest are obviously coming with a high risk. So no wonder that you are ready to finance high risk companies. So obviously there will be a downfall somewhere. So long time back, of course, the classic case in finance, and in fact it's a classic case of law which has dominated to a large extent finance education, which has percolated to the practice in finance, which is the Ford versus Dodge case. I remember that in this auditorium, I might have mentioned this at least thrice or 4 times about that case. I still feel relevant to bring that to the notice of this gathering too. That's a classic case on 2 fronts. Because in Ford wanted not to give the dividend to the shareholder. Because the shareholder, which is Dodge Brothers, wanted to take money and start a competitive unit for them. Ford says money is required for growth of the company. But the court say it is the duty of the company to maximize, to give return to the shareholder, force Ford to give the dividend. From that case, the law professors, finance professor, accounting professor take it for granted that it is a responsibility of the company to maximize the shareholders' wealth. But actually, you have to understand, the corporations itself has changed over a period. That was a closely held company, very limited shareholding, but now largely, widely, large number of shareholders. The debt holders have equal role to play today. So therefore, the very concept that the shareholders own the company is being questioned now. So therefore, my humble questions in front of the experienced panelists is the crisis is because of the obsession of the shareholders' wealth. Is the crisis because of the weak regulatory norms? Or is it because the regulations are strong, howsoever strong, there is an excess between the regulator and the regulatee, the companies are so strong that the rules go for a toss. At the same time, it's a challenge to our professors that are we teaching about only the maximum, particularly finance. All our finance books and accounting books are written with this excessive dominance of shareholders maximization. So is crisis related to that? Is crisis related to the market or is crisis related to the regulator? Having said this, I hand it over to my student colleague and hope we'll have a richer discussion throughout the day, and some of my questions and your questions are expected to be answered by. Thank you very much.